All right, thanks, Kelly. Let's get back to the better-than-expected jobs report for the month of June and what it signals about the pace of the recovery. Marc Morial, former mayor of New Orleans and currently the president and CEO of the National Urban League. Mayor Morial, it's great as always to see you.
Good to see you, Todd. Thank you.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful that we added nearly 5 million jobs, which is 40% more than the expectations were. That's fantastic. But these numbers, if there's a nit to pick, it seems to me, it's that these numbers were plucked from the middle of the month before we started to see a major rise in case count and some of the slowdowns and backing offs of reopening around the country.
So, Ty, you make an excellent point that these numbers do not accurately reflect the pain that the American people are feeling. And let's put these numbers in more of a historical context. At 11%, that unemployment rate is higher than the highest unemployment rate during the Great Recession of 10 years ago. Let's also indicate that 11% unemployment rate does not count the 6 million Americans who are now working part-time, who want to work full-time, or the 4 million Americans who've had their pay slashed. The number does not even, if we look at the context of 4 million jobs, what does that mean? That means that with last month and this month, we're still just 1/3 of the way back to where the economy was in February. So I think that the hoopla is not well placed. The economy is still suffering. We're going to see GDP growth declines of a significant level in both the second quarter and the third quarter. And now we have spikes in 30 states, which will slow down the recovery. What does this mean? Additional stimulus by the Federal Reserve and mainly the Congress is absolutely essential as enhanced unemployment benefits run out, as cities and states that are now preparing their budgets for the next fiscal year face perhaps significant, if you will, layoffs. So let's put the numbers in a broader context. If you just look at that 4 million in isolation, it looks great. But if you look at it in connection with all of the other things I've shared, this economy is in difficult shape.
And if, as you point out, Mayor, if there are major budget cutbacks in, for example, New York State, California, other states around the country, and layoffs in the municipal workforces, that could be bring another wave of major unemployment. So I assume you would favor the passage immediately of the HEROES Act, which would extend, among other things.
Should pass for two reasons. Number one, remember, municipal employees and state employees have been essential employees, frontline workers. They're people in education, people in healthcare, people in law enforcement, people in public safety, firefighters, police officers, many of the most important public safety, public employees we have. We don't want to see layoffs there. Imagine the impact it'll have, not only on their families, but also on the ability of the economy to come back when it is safe for the economy to begin to return. So I think that this report has to be looked at with multiple caveats with respect to what we're facing. And we need that HEROES Act. And the other reason why the HEROES Act is important is it's tough to look a teacher in the eye, a healthcare worker in the eye, and say that the government put together a huge credit facility to assist businesses who are having liquidity challenges, that the Federal Reserve helped financial services firms and clean up their balance sheets and remove non-performing assets. And then, basically, what are you going to say? Well, we don't think we should do anything for you. So there's a moral issue here. There's an equivalency issue here with the nation in the shape that it's in to do the right thing.
You know, I'm going to make an observation that may have a question embedded in it, but I'm sure you'll be able to pick up on my thought. You know, the United States has learned or been confronted by many of the facets of inequality over the past 6 to 8 weeks. And in these numbers about unemployment, there is yet another facet, and that is that unemployment for Black Americans remains 4 or more percentage points higher than it does for white Americans, and 4 percentage points above the national rate of everyone. We've also learned through COVID about inequalities in health care, which in part points to inequalities about residential living and housing. And of course, we've learned a lot about inequalities in criminal justice. Do you think that we are learning lessons that we will really apply and make changes on the economic front, on the healthcare front, on the housing front, on the criminal justice front? How do we move forward?
As a nation, we must make changes. Ty, the numbers that you outlined are the definition of structural racism and inequality. The fact that there's been no instance in the past 50 years where the black unemployment rate has equaled the white unemployment rate. No instance in the last 50 years plus, and I'm using that context because that's the emergence of the availability of really good numbers, where the health conditions or the life expectancies of African Americans equated that of whites. There's been no instance where the high school graduation rates, the college matriculation rates have equaled that. The black rate has equaled that of whites. That's the definition. And so do we tolerate that as normal? Do we make excuses about it as a nation? Or do we confront the fact that fixing it and repairing it is not only good for African Americans, it's good for the nation at large. It improves the economy. It creates GDP and productivity. And that's what I think investors and business people have to understand. Tackling this issue is not only a social good, it's an economic good. And it's so critical that we do it because in the last several weeks, these inequalities have laid bare. The reality that we've talked about and worked on for years is now people are far more aware. And I think there's a large, growing number of people of all races who are saying enough is enough. Let's confront this. Let's deal with it. Can a great nation with an economy, with the intellectual capital that we have, can it position itself? Can it tackle these issues? I want to believe yes, but it's going to take tremendous goodwill. More than a conversation, it's going to require action.
Well, thank you. Mayor Morial, always good to see you, and the conversation continues. Good to see you. We'll see you next month. Thanks very much.
Happy
Kelly.
4th. Thank you.